You're listening to Sarah Hagan Backstage, with interviews and insights from years inside the music industry. Join Sarah as she talks with masters of their crafts, finding out what makes them tick, both inside and outside of the music business.
Welcome to Sarah Hagan Backstage. My guest today, Keio Stroud, is one of the funniest and hardest working drummers I know. He is best known for his years touring with Big and Rich, but he has a long and diverse career in music, and he is now an independent session musician based out of Nashville and playing some pretty great gigs as his schedule allows. We are going to talk about how he got his start, his transition from life as a constantly touring drummer, and we will hear some encouraging words for other drummers as well. So come along with me as I catch up with Keio Stroud. Keio, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
It is great to see you. Although I did just see you. I just saw.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago, right?
Saw you in person at PASIC. So long. We got to hang at PASIC, which was so much fun.
It was.
It was great.
Yeah, no, it was good. That was a much needed getaway and see old friends. Not that you're old, but I've known you for a few years. So
we've known each other a long time. Neither of us are old. It's okay.
No.
Right. But we were on a panel together, which was super fun. It was the drum set panel discussion. And for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what PASIC is, it's the Percussive Art Society International Convention that happens every year in Indianapolis in November. And it's just like a big family reunion, basically. But
it really is.
Right? It's so great. But we were on a panel discussion together, and you were so fantastic and brought the humor as always. So I appreciated that.
It's what I do. It's what I do. No, that was actually a lot of fun. I learned a lot of stuff, and it was really cool, like, to be on a panel with like those guys. It's like, two of those dudes are like my heroes. One I just recently met a couple of years ago, and then I've known Rich for a while. So Terry I just met, but Rich I've known for a while. So yeah, it was way cool, and to be included in that was like, oh wow, like, all right, here I am.
Yeah, and like I thought it was really cool because everyone really had their area of expertise and had their place. You know what I mean? In that discussion, it was Greg Bissonette, Peter Erskine, Rich Stitzel, and Trey O'Toole, and you. And everyone kind of came at the questions and the discussion from like their own perspective, which was different, so it was fun. But so sitting up there with, you mentioned like Greg and Peter being two of your heroes, like those moments, how does that feel?
It was kind of surreal, just to be honest, because like I feel like I grew up with their careers. You know what I mean? Obviously, those guys had careers before I was born. Just weird. Maybe not before I was born. Maybe Peter, probably before I was born. But like I was a kid, so I remember watching. Greg Bissonette on MTV. I also remember like watching clips of Peter Erskine like on various like late night shows with Steely Dan back in the day. And then when when drum videos became a thing before YouTube, I remember just buying every time those guys would put out something, I'd buy it and check it out. And I remember like Peter Erskine had that one video where his cymbals looked weird, and then I guess they had sprayed some sort of stuff on the cymbals to knock the shine down.
Really?
Kind of, yeah. He talked about that on something like many years ago. But there's a I forget which one it is, but there's a video of him playing. But like you see the cymbals, and you're like, why do they look so weird? Yeah. And what's funny is that like today, there are symbols that look like that now, like on purpose.
Right. On purpose, right? That's so funny.
Yeah, but it was really cool. And I haven't seen Greg in a few years. I met Greg many years ago, and I met Peter a couple of years ago in Nashville. So we've met each other like kind of in passing, more fanboy, like, oh my God, kind of deal, as opposed to like, oh yo, man, we're cool. I play drums, you play drums, Yeah. And the coolest thing about that for me was for those guys to accept me as a peer and my opinions as equal, if that makes any sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were like, it wasn't like I say something, they were like, shut up. I mean, they could have, when I was okay with that. But you know what I mean? They were, you know, we went back and forth about some things, and they were like, oh man, I mean, I saw them like writing stuff down that I was saying, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, you gave some really great tips and suggestions, like coming from a whole different perspective. And that's what I loved about that panel discussion. Afterward, a lot of people came up and they were like, you know, I learned so much. And that made me super happy, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Like,
yeah. Well, that's what we're all there for. I mean, that's the beauty of that whole convention, you know, or that whole thing. I'm even going to call it a convention. I'm going to call it a movement. That's the whole the cool thing about that is that everyone comes to learn and to fellowship. You know what I mean? It's like you get together, you see people that you haven't seen in years. You see people you saw just last week. And then you meet people that you've never seen before in various things, you know, and it's either at the bar or at a clinic or at a master, you know, like you see people and then you see the same people going to the same things you're going to, and you're like, oh, hey man, like you like what I like. What's your name? You know, and they're like, oh, my name is Benny Gleb. You're like, oh, hey, Benny. No, you know, you know.
Yes.
But you know what I mean? Yeah, you know. So,
and I said the same thing, like for a drummer coming up too. Like, where else do you get the chance to just like sit at the bar with Benny Greb, or run into Dave Weckl as he's picking up his pizza from the, you know, the restaurant, or like that kind of thing, or go to the jam night and like really get a chance to be up close and personal with, you know, all the cats. Like that to me is the meaning of PASIC, like connecting people like that and making them feel part of this like community, you know, like it's a community event, right?
Absolutely. It's like, when's the last time you saw Dave Weckl play in a hotel lobby?
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean?
Or
when's the last
time, by other drummers.
Yeah. Or you see like, you know, like Jason McGurr in 2019, when I did a clinic for PASIC, Jason McGurr was there hanging out, which I thought was cool. And this year, my buddy Whit, who plays drums for the band Old Dominion, who is a wildly successful drummer that people just don't know. I know that sounds really silly, but his band they've done really, really well. You know, they've been doing stadiums with Chesney and stuff like that. But he was there just kind of hanging out with some friends and going to clinics and taking it all in. And it was cool because, I mean, I know him and I'm like, man, if that guy like takes time off from being away from his family after touring to come see this, then like, I feel like more people should probably come see this.
Right.
Because, you know what I mean? Because
and that's why I keep talking about it. Cause I'm like, drummers need to know about this. Like, and young drummers and everything. Like, I didn't know PASIC was happening when I was a young drummer and I was in school, but I didn't know about it. And like, how great would that have been? I know a lot of schools come and, you know,
I know. I have to look this up. So pardon me for looking this up, but I'm trying to remember what year this was, because you'll laugh about this. I went to PASIC for the first time, I think in 1992.
Oh, really?
4. Yeah, I was in middle school, so yeah, so 92, I think, in Atlanta. I think that's what it was. I could be wrong, but I remember, and it was either 92 or 91. Either way, I can't remember. Anyway, but that was the first time I went, and I remember meeting Herb Brockstein, who owned Chrome Record at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I met Chad Smith.
Yeah.
And then I met Larry London, which makes me believe that it was 91, because I think he passed in 92, but I can't remember. But I do remember, as a kid not knowing who any of these people were, by the way. I didn't know anybody. I just I was a kid, and it was a band field trip to go to PASIC for a day.
Yes.
And my mom was a chaperone, and I remember this really well.
Wow.
My mom was a chaperone, and you know, it was like, oh, well, go ahead, kids. There's drums, do whatever. But we had to report back. You know, you had to report back to your chaperone every hour, kind of thing. And so I remember one time I went to go report back to my mom because she was my chaperone, and she was talking to Chad Smith, which I thought was hilarious because she was like telling him, she's like, "Oh yeah, my son plays drums and blah 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 blah," and he was like, "Oh cool, yeah, I play drums, you know," and so I met him. She was like,
That's
"Oh, this
amazing.
is my son," and I was like, "Hey," you know, it was
yeah, that's amazing.
Because I was even shorter then, and he's tall, so it was like,
Yes.
you know, but
That's
yeah,
incredible. Yeah, but it is. It's one of those experiences where you really get to like get up close and personal with people that you know, see on TV that influence you and influence your
oh,
playing and all that stuff.
totally.
So I love
I know,
that about it.
I know,
But
yeah. And the next time I went was in '98, actually, in Orlando. I went with my granddad went with me, which is
oh,
this is hilarious, by the way. So we go down to it was in Orlando, so I think it was '98. We go to Orlando, and he comes with me, and it's his first time on an airplane, and it's my first time on an airplane, which is really funny.
oh my gosh.
So imagine that you have these two dudes you have on the airplane for the first time. But we go down there, and there was so PASIC was happening, and then there was a Benny Hinn convention. You know that like the evangelist guy.
Yeah.
So I went to PASIC, and my grandfather went to the Benny.
Wow.
And one of my favorite memories of that was we were walking. It was like after like an evening concert or something. We were walking back to our hotel, and they had like this this fake alligator, coming out of the water by the convention center or whatever. And we're walking by it, and my granddad sees it. He just goes, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, because it's real in Florida, right? Like
And we
that's
both
so
just
funny.
we still laugh about that. I mean, that's been 20 something years ago now. He and I,
Aw.
he still that story. He's like, "You remember?" And I was like, "Oh, I remember that." Yeah. So
I love it. I love that. Well, like, so you just talked about your mom chaperoning a PASIC
yeah.
trip, right? And your grandfather going with you to Orlando for PASIC. So it sounds like you had a lot of support in your dreams,
Oh
basically. Your
yeah,
family's
totally.
dreams.
Yeah, my folks were cool, man. They were like really into it because they're also like my dad's a musician, my granddad's a musician, my great granddad was a musician. You know, so it's kind of I joke and say it's a family business. But and my brother was a musician also. My brother's 10 years younger than me.
Wow.
It's weird. He's 10 years and 4 days younger than me. We almost have the same birthday.
Wow, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, I don't like him. I don't like him at all. No, but yeah, music was something that was big in our house. So I grew up with my grandparents, and so music was a big thing. My grandmother every morning. We were like really fancy folks when I was a kid. So we had an intercom system in our house, which I think is hilarious. But now
Yeah.
thinking about that, I was like, why do we have it? Whatever. It's like, how lazy are you that you need the intercom system? They'd be like, okay, come eat, or you know what I mean? Like literally,
Yeah,
it was
that was a thing though. That was a
it was
thing, like in the 90s, right? Like
it's hilarious.
yeah.
I look back on it like, why the hell are we
Yeah.
between that and we had a telephone in the bathroom. I thought was really funny.
Oh my
My,
goodness. Like
yeah,
hotel style.
oh yeah, my grandfather had a telephone in the bathroom, which I thought was really really funny.
That's amazing.
He still does, and that is so fun. That house, unfortunately, that house burned down. They rebuilt it
Oh,
almost exactly the same, and one of the things that remained was a telephone in the bathroom. So,
that's incredible.
but
Does
with
he
those
call
other
you
things,
from the bathroom? Do you get bathroom phone calls?
I haven't in years. I haven't in
Okay.
years. Now he just texts me. He
Well,
just
of
like
course.
he'll text me like long novels
He
about his
texts
day.
you from the bathroom.
Yeah. But so with that being said, I grew up with them, and my grandmother's a singer, my granddad plays piano and bass, and my dad plays guitar, and my aunts play and sing, and cousins, all that. And so we always just had music at home. So it was always a big thing to have. We have jam sessions. Me and my granddad would work on like drums and bass together and stuff like that. But back to the intercom system, one of the funniest things was the intercom system was hooked up to a record player that we had. And so my grandmother would wake up in the morning and she would pick a record and play it.
Mhm.
And that's how we woke up every morning. As opposed to hearing the radio, we would hear whatever, and it was like James Brown or the Temptations, or it could be Led Zeppelin, or it could be whatever because she was a funny lady. I mean, she's still a funny lady. So she had a pretty decent record collection of
Sounds
just
like it.
of random stuff, just the most random shit ever that you would think like at that time a 60-year-old black woman would have. You're like, why do you
Mhm.
have this? And you're like, who? Huh? How do you have Scarface? You have Scarface on vinyl.
That's
What's this?
awesome, though.
Yeah, like your grandma's hip when she's got like Doggy Style on vinyl, and you're like, excuse me, grandmother.
I love it. That's the kind of grandmother I want to be someday, right? Like, that's grandma goals right there.
I think you'll do it.
Thank
So,
you.
but yeah, so it was funny that we would have that, and so I was able to have love and appreciate music at an early age, and love the art of making music also. I got
Mhm.
to do. We had a family band, and so I got to do recordings as early as like 8 years old. So
Wow.
I would go in the studio like because I was the drummer.
Mhm.
So I would and my cousin Dennis was also a drummer, but but I was the favorite because I was cute and cool, whatever. Not because I was good by any means, but he was like, he's available. He's 8. Come play drums.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, that was some of my earliest playing. Mine was playing at church. Was I played in a studio, and I would do those family records, and it's really funny because I have some of them, and they're bad. They're
I was
not.
just gonna ask you that question if you have those recordings.
I'm lying. They're not bad, but
No.
I'm being where I am at now as opposed to where I was when I was 8, 9, 10,
Oh,
12,
for
14 years
sure.
old. I look back and think of like some of my choices and I go, whatever. But I remember one time we went in, I was in high school, and this is when I had a moment where I thought I wanted to be a pro baseball player, which is hilarious, by the way. Um,
Wow.
I was a big baseball fan. Terry Pendleton was my favorite baseball player, still is, I guess. And he and I are built the same, except for he's like athletic some kind of way, and I'm not. But so I played third base, and I was a
Mhm.
decent baseball player. I wasn't great, obviously, but when I was in high school, I had to make a choice between playing baseball or music, and I chose
Mhm.
music. And it was really funny because I look back on it now and I was like, maybe I really wasn't that good at baseball. I just loved it that much, but I'm pretty good at music, so I should do this. Uh, but I remember one time in high school, we were making a record. It was after I had ditched baseball, the dream of
Mhm.
baseball had ditched it, and we were making a record with a producer, like a real record with my family, and the producer was like, "I don't think your grandson's a good drummer."
Oh no.
And my granddad was like, it's so funny. We're making a Christian record. He's like, "Yeah, fuck you, whatever, dude." And so true story. So they had a guy. They literally had another drummer, like a session drummer, there to basically play if I sucked.
Wow.
So let's just talk about pressure. No pressure,
Right?
pressure, whatever,
They're like,
right?
"Yeah, you're gonna play on this, but here's this guy waiting over here."
He's
That's
waiting for you to screw up.
yeah.
So we try to get a couple tunes, and it was my first time really, really playing with the click. And I was probably 13, I think. So anyway, we're doing it, and it's not gelling the way it's supposed to gel. And the guy was hard ass, and I remember we after 2 songs we finally got, and he was like, "I don't know how I feel about this. It's just a waste of time," and blah 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 blah. And then I remember I went to the guy and I said, "If playing with the click is a problem, I said when you guys go to lunch, I said just leave the click rolling, and I'll play to it." And so I forget what tempo it was, but he set the click at a tempo. And for the next hour and a half, I just played a groove for an hour and a half. I was very serious. And my whole deal was I wanted to sync up, I wanted to lock to the click.
Mm.
And I did it. And so then after lunch, the next song we played it, and I nailed it. And the guy was like, oh, okay. So the other drummer just went home. And I was like,
Awesome.
all right. So my confidence was there and it was cool. And what's really funny is that same day, I got hip to uh, Peter Erskine on a live Steely Dan record. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
because
crazy.
that day was my introduction to Steely Dan also. Because he said, you should go listen to this record.
I love that.
Okay. It was a CD. So I did. I borrowed this guy's CD and I took it back home and listened to my Walkman and then came back with like all these ideas.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I know it's pretty funny, but anyway, sorry, long story, but yeah.
No, that's a great story. And I love that, like, I feel like the exposure to different styles of music and the exposure to new music, like at whatever age, right? Like
Oh, totally.
you came home with like new ideas, new perspectives, like new
Oh,
things to try. And those are the best drummers because they leave you with that,
oh,
right?
totally, yeah. And that was the thing with my childhood too that was cool. Um, Everything was open. Like we could
Mm,
listen to any kind of music. My grandparents would buy me anything. My granddad
mhm,
was not really into rap music. Rap was not his thing. It's still not his thing, right?
mhm.
He's like he's funny. He's just a funny old man. But he's a very open dude, but yet very funny. Um, but if I wanted something, they would buy it, and then we had to listen to it together.
Mhm.
So me and my granddad and my grandmother would listen to it together. And if it was cool, then I got to keep the CD and I could listen to it on my own. If it wasn't cool, it went in the trash. That
Wow.
was just how it was. That was like, and every now and then my grandmother would go and like sneak them out of the trash for me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That is so funny.
I remember that my favorite one was I really for whatever reason loved Scarface, the rapper. He had that record, The Diary,
Mhm.
and we listened. We got 30 seconds into it before it went to the trash. 30 seconds in.
Oh my goodness.
He's like, nope, nope, right?
Oh
so
my gosh.
so I remember going, well, all right, there's that. And rightfully so, by the way, because I, at that age, probably should have listened to that stuff. But my grandmother, she went and got it. And then she was like, here, don't tell your grandfather. I
Oh,
was
that's
like,
so funny. That
it
what
was,
else do you remember anything else that went into the trash?
I, that one did. I think there was like an NWA record that did mostly rap music.
Right.
Uh, the Frank Zappa stuff that I got as a kid, he didn't understand, but it was so weird that he was like, "Okay, I get it. It's just like whatever, kid. If that's what you want to listen to, what you know."
Have at
And
it, right? Yeah.
what's really funny is that I realized that the more complex the music was, which is so funny because I play very simple is music now, but the more complex the music was, the more forgiving he was about lyrical content because he was like, oh, well, this, because he was a musician. So he's like, oh,
Right.
well, this song's in 9 and the kid wants to, he's attracted to it because it's in this time signature or, you know what I mean? As opposed to
Yes.
like, oh, he likes it because it says boats and hoes or whatever. You know what I mean? So,
Right, exactly.
you
Well,
know what
and
I mean? So,
I think, like, you and I are pretty close to the same age about, and I think that, like, we were the first generation that had, like, that explicit lyrics
oh, yeah.
tag, right? So, like, our parents or grandparents or whoever was buying us music, when we were too young to buy it ourselves, like, that was, "All right, this one may not be appropriate," and I also had very open parents, so they would really kinda let me listen to whatever it was, but definitely there were some times that they were like, "What is this?" I remember some,
Yeah.
like, Nine Inch Nails and things like that where they would be like, "What did he say?" You know?
Yeah.
It was serious, so
I
I can
know.
picture that.
I know. You know, one of the coolest things though, I think about our people our age growing up, you know, with give or take 3 or 4 years in front and back of it, is that what pop music or popular music, I should say, at that time was a bit of everything. It wasn't
Mm,
just and what people weren't chasing a thing. It was a
Yes.
lot of like because you could have Nine Inch Nails, you could have REM, you could have after Seven, you could have Babyface, you could have you
Mhm.
could have all these different things, and they were all popular at the same time, and it
Yes.
was cool, and everybody was listening to everything, and nothing sounded alike. I'm not saying that everything sounds alike today, but
Mhm.
it kind of people are chasing a thing, which I get it. There's a formula you want to chase or whatever,
Yeah.
but I love that about being a younger kid because like you could like have a Nine Inch Nails record, you could have an REM record, you could have a Babyface record, you could have an NWA record, you could have a Frank Zappa thing, you could like, it was all of
Mhm.
that, and it was all relevant at the same time, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is cool. Or Fiona Apple, it's
Yeah.
like you could
And it was
go
all like
all
it was
yeah.
all talented, like, in its own right, right? Like, it and in its own way, like, there was so much talent. I think about the '90s as, like, such an amazing time in music, and, I felt lucky that it was, like, my formative years of getting into music and playing and learning and all of that, because there was so much, and it was so diverse, just all the styles, and
Oh
I
yeah.
felt like I was into pretty much everything at that time and, like, was just, consuming music as it was coming because there was so much new,
Oh
like
yeah.
you just
Absolutely.
mentioned Fiona Apple. Like, I think when she came out, I was like, "What is this?" Like, it was so different and the music was so great and it
Mhm.
was, the lyrics were great and all of that. Um, but yeah, it was an amazing time to be, like, discovering music, I
Oh
think.
yeah, no, I loved it. And what was really fun too is like, the '90s kind of brought some strange incarnations of bands. So like, I didn't, my first time hearing of Van Halen was with Sammy Hagar.
Mhm.
Billy Roth was a solo artist when I got hip to them.
Right.
Because I loved MTV. I was a big MTV kid, right?
Mhm.
But
Me too.
I didn't know the history of Van Halen, so I didn't realize that David Lee Roth was at one point in time in Van Halen. I just
Mhm.
knew Van Halen with Sammy Hagar. So the first like Van Halen song I remember hearing was Right Now. And I was
Right.
like, oh, cool. All right, I remember that. And then I didn't buy the record, but I was like, I like that song, whatever. But then they came out with that record Balance, and that was the first Van Halen record I bought, and I love it. I still love that record today. But
Mhm.
people will be like, that's not a Van Halen record. That record sucks. But and I'm like,
Oh my
what?
gosh.
I was like,
That is
but David Lee Roth has Just a Gigolo. That I like that too. But that's so like they were together. It's
yeah. I know there's a lot of yeah, there are, very strong opinions about
yeah,
which is better and who is better and all of that stuff, but that's
exactly.
so funny. But I
But
think,
the
like,
cool thing
so
is
listening to, like, your musical influences and, like, how diverse they are really makes sense to, like, where you ended up in your musical journey because you've had such a diverse, experience as far as playing wise with all the artists that you've played with. It is
that
genre diverse for sure.
yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, I will say this. That was listening to music was a big education for me, and then I would also play it. My grandparents are very nice. They let me play in the garage all the time, so I
Mhm.
was doing that. Like true story. I learned how to play country music by listening to Little Jimmy Dickens and Brooks and Dunn.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like, and then I would have never thought years later, like literally 30 years later, I got to play. Well, this past year, I got to play with Ronnie Dunn from Brooks and Dunn. I played like a solo show with him, which is like a
Oh,
dream come true for me because I was like, that's how I learned to play drums.
yeah.
Hearing that guy sing, and then 20 years ago, or maybe about 20 years ago now, the first time I played the Opry, Little Jimmy Dickens was the host, and so
Wow.
I got to meet Little Jimmy Dickens, and I was like, "Hey, man!" I mean, this is a really funny story, and I can tell this part of it. But I met him, and he was like, "You are a great drummer." I was like, "Thank you." I go, "My grandfather loves you. Pick us." Okay, and then we parted ways, and then about I don't know 30 minutes later, his personal assistant guy he came and got me. He was like, "Hey man, little Jimmy Dickens wants to talk to you." I was like, okay." He goes, "And bring a pair of drumsticks." And I was like, "All right." So I literally, and it was this is hilarious, brother. I played big drumsticks for whatever reason, whatever.
Mhm.
But I was playing this massive Thomas Lang drumsticks, and we were at the Opry. But I bring them with me to meet little Jimmy Dickens, and he's asked me to sign a pair of sticks for him, and then he signed a picture to my grandfather. So we traded. So he got the sticks, and I got the photo. And he said to me, he goes, "This is my favorite photo because Kenny Rogers took it of me." He goes, and I was like, "That's cool." I said, because I used to live like, not necessarily in the same neighborhood, but I lived in the same town as Kenny Rogers when I was a kid. So it was like, it was really funny, like to have that little weird exchange there. But anyway, it just goes back. That's a random story, but it just goes back to like how things will do this if you put them in the universe. They kind of happen.
Absolutely, like total full circle moments there. That's incredible.
Richard Marx was the same way. I mean, I remember watching Take This Heart, the video of Take This Heart there in the baseball stadium and all that. And I was like, man, that guy's cool. I want to play drums for him. And it was like 15 years later, I had a phone call from Richard Marx. And I'm like, holy shit.
Unbelievable. I was going to ask you about that too, because, you know, he like, just like you, like that was MTV time, right? And Richard Marx was all over it, all over MTV. And, you know, so getting a chance to play with him, like that must've been really cool too.
It was way cool because like, you know, and it's funny to, and you know this, and anyone that plays music with, or with anybody, I guess, but you know, if you're, as a kid, especially like now everybody has in-ears now, you know, as a kid, you had your Walkman or your tape player and you had your headphones and, you know, so you would listen to these records and you would hear this voice, you hear these voices, right? And so to me, it's funny because when I get to play with people, you know, that are older or from that generation of, you know, the 90s, when I listen to the music and I hear their voices in my in-ears, it takes me back to being a kid playing along to their CDs when I, you know, in my garage, but we're in an arena. Yeah. You know, like now, like so the audience I used to envision, now I'm envisioning they're not there.
Yeah, right. That's
you know so funny. So, you know, but hearing that, and I remember Victor Broden, who was playing bass, because basically Victor and I got hired to be subs for Richard for a summer. His normal band couldn't do some dates, so we got hired on as the guys to play with him when those guys couldn't do it. And we ended up doing more dates than we thought we were going to do, kind of deal. And it was a lot of fun. And Victor's from Sweden, and he's a super fan. He loves Randy Jackson. I love Randy Jackson. We love, you know, Nathan East and all those guys that play that stuff. So one day we were flying somewhere and we're sitting next to each other. And we both had the same Richard Marx CD. We weren't listening to like we were listening to Rush Street. We weren't listening to like the board tapes. We both had our CD player Walkmans with the CDs, listening to the same thing, and we were laughing because we were like, man, like we're actually like huge fans of this dude that we're working with. And he was very nice to work for. And like I said, it just, you know, hearing those tunes, like I said, coming through your in-ears, hearing the voice of him or Ronnie Dunn or you know, or anyone that you kind of grew up listening to, when you hear those voices there, you're just like, oh wow, you know, holy shit, you know. Well, so
that's amazing. I love that. And you know, I met Richard Marx when he was on the Ringo Starr the All Stars tour, and I didn't know he was on that tour. It was really kind of a funny moment where, like, I'm always guilty of seeing someone in the distance who looks familiar to me and thinking like we must be long lost friends. Like that's what goes through my head. I'm like, oh, that's must who is that? That must be a friend of mine. Like why does that go through my head? I don't know. But I did that when I saw him. I was like, oh, who is that? I know him. We must be friends. You know, that was like my thought. And it was funny because like that can lead to an awkward situation because he obviously doesn't know who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
I know you.
Right? I know
Yeah.
you. Yeah, we go to school together. No. But you know, he kind of like walked toward me and I was like, "Oh, hi," you know, and it started up this really great conversation. I didn't make a fool of myself by saying, "We must know each other," you know, but so nice, such a nice person. When I realized like who I was talking to, I was like, "Oh, okay, Sarah, like, you know, you're not everybody's BFF," but it was really fun. Like he was such a sweet, sweet guy, and then like to see him go out on stage, and what an awesome tour that is. If you get a chance to see Ringo Starr All-Star Tour.
I know. I've been close to seeing it. I haven't seen it yet. They've come to Nashville a couple of times, but I think I have it in now with Bissonette. So I'm gonna we exchange numbers. Actually, you probably you'll get this inside joke, but he gave me his number, and I just text him a picture of a buffet, and he just goes, Keio.
I love it. Like, that is the amazing thing about this community. Like, right? Everyone has the same sense of humor. Everyone has this, like, you know, just camaraderie, which is so sweet. I love it. I love it so much.
Between that and the fact that I'm in Peter Erskine's phone as Keio Stroud, my son, I think that's pretty awesome too.
And you know, anyone who's listening that's like, what are they talking about? The panel discussion that we were talking about earlier at PASIC, it was so fun, and like the flow of it with Keio and the other guests was incredible. And of course, like there was so much humor that was exchanged. And there was one point where, and you could tell the story, but you talked about you sending your mom a picture of you and Peter. And you could take it from there because it was so funny.
Well, I sent a photo of mom. I was excited, and I was like, "Hey, here's a photo of me and Peter Erskine." You know, my mom's like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "It's my dad."
And Peter loved it too.
And his wife was so sweet. She like, that's a great photo. I'm not sure. I guess Peter took the photo. There's a photo of she and I hugging. We're both laughing about that moment. That was pretty good. So that was fun.
Peter's wife, she's such a beautiful person. I love her so much.
She's a sweetheart.
So good. But I want to hear a story from you. I have to hear this story because I have not heard this, but I've heard about it. And it basically involves you being stood up on a date that led to your career taking off. So I have to hear this, like, you know.
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. Okay. So it was 2014. It was 2013 going into 2014. It was New Year's Day. So, it was like New Year's Day, day after New Year's, one of those 2 days. So I was supposed to go out with this girl, who we're actually friends now, which is great. And she's whatever. She's married, has kids. She's great. Her life's good now. So is mine. So anyway, she stood me up on a date. So I got all depressed, and not depressed, but I was kind of bummed because I was like, I'm kind of like a hopeless romantic in so many ways, where I'm like, I would love to meet my dream woman and be dreamy, whatever the hell that means, right?
Do dreamy things together.
Yeah, just sit there and stare at each other and watch Facts of Life. I don't know. I'm not sure what people do. So she stood me up. So I was sitting on my couch watching Ridiculousness, and just like, man, I kind of hate my life, whatever. And it's midnight 30, and I get this phone call, and I don't answer it because I'm like, I don't know this number. Who the hell is this? Whatever. So I don't answer it. And then they call me again, and I was like, whatever. So then I get a phone call from my buddy Stoney LaRue, and he's like, hey, man. I was like, hey, what's up? And he's like, hey, my tour manager's been trying to call you. And I go, why? He goes, well, my drummer just quit. and we're dropping him off in Denver at the airport, and we're going to Steamboat, Colorado, and we need a drummer.
Wow.
And he goes, and so we got you a plane ticket. I hope you can do it.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, yeah, man, sounds good. So I'll give the condensed version of the story because it's funny. But so I was like, all right, cool. We'll have your guy call me. So the guy calls me. He goes, hey, man, so here's the deal. You have a flight in 5 hours, basically. Blah, 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 details. Can you bring a drum set? I go,
oh my gosh.
no, I can't fly a drum set. What the hell is wrong with you, right? So he goes, all right, we'll figure it out. So then he said, it went from, so can you play this one show? I go, yeah. Then it was like, hey, this is actually like a 2-week run for us. So can you do all of it? And I was like, well, I got nothing going on. I had plans with this girl. She bailed, and yeah, I'm in. So, and it was a true story. It was January. I had nothing going on. So I did. I packed my stuff, called a cab, got as much drum stuff as I could. It's just snare drums and cymbals. Get to the airport. I get on the plane and realize I don't have any music.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're like, what am I actually playing?
Yeah, and it's
What
2014. Yeah, I wasn't totally hip to like technology. I was kind of dumb. Actually, still kind of dumb, but I wasn't like hip to like downloading stuff or or whatever. So I get on the plane, I fly there, I get in, I get to the cabin because like where they have the way they have it was like, oh, we have a cabin for the bands kind of deal, and because it was like a festival thing. We were there for like 4 days or 3 days, whatever. So the old drummer I knew. So I texted him and I was like, hey man, I'm not sure what happened, but can you do me a favor? Can you like send me the tempos for the songs? And he was like, oh yeah, man, totally, no problem. So he sends me the tempos, and we're texting back and forth, and I was like, so cool, man. So like, are you back home? He's like, no, I'm in the room next to you.
What?
I was like, what? So we're in the same house. He and I are literally in the same house, but we're not talking to each other. He's like, I get it. He's doing the same, whatever. He's getting ready to leave. And I was like, all right, cool. So then I get out in the snow because we're in Steamboat, and I like mosey around and I'm talking to people. And so I'm trying to find the crew guys so I can get music. Because like the live stuff was like on a Zoom recorder,
God.
I can't find them. I can't find anybody. So, and we're playing the next day. So the next morning I show up to sound check. I'm the only one that shows up to sound check because those guys didn't do sound check. But I'm the only one that shows up. And at that moment, the guy goes, "Oh, here you go." He hands me the Zoom recorder, and I just plug my headphones in, and I tried out a 90-minute show. That was my sound check.
Wow. Yeah.
It was kind of a weird deal, and I tell this story, and it's I'm leaving out some of the dirty details, and there's no real dirty details, but it was kind of weird because it was a Texas music festival, and I live in Nashville, and so the idea that they had brought this Nashville guy in. Because there's tons of guys in Texas that can play drums, and they're great drummers. And honestly, they probably should have called one of those guys, but they called me because I was friends with Stoney, whatever. But so I'm there, and I'm getting some kind of weird looks from people because they're like, because Texas and Nashville, we didn't start to really melt together or gel together until recently. As far as like the acceptance of the two cultures of music working together, kind of thing. But anyway, so people are giving me weird looks, and so we're headlining, and I remember this very well because Cody Johnson played before us, and I met his drummer Miles and his band, and they were like the sweetest guys, and they were like, man, we're gonna watch you play, and I was like, man, this is gonna be a shit show. I'm reading this stuff. I've played these songs years ago, but whatever. So I have a music stand. Actually, I don't have a music stand. I have 2 cymbal stands. And the way I did it was I wrote, I don't have a piece of paper in front of me, but like, imagine a piece of paper and imagine putting 8 songs per paper. So remember, so the charts are that big, right?
Oh my
So
goodness.
so I did that, and then I taped them together, and then I taped them to cymbal stands. So I just had like a wall of paper
Wow.
with songs, and then looking over that, you could just see there was like a little area where all the bands hung out. And as we're playing, I noticed that every band's drummer and bass player and people were there watching the circus. They're like, basically, they're like, is this guy's he's gonna fall on his ass. He's gonna fall on his face. So anyway, and the records that Stoney made at that time had 2 drummers. So I had a kit set up to kind of emulate the 2 snare sounds and all this stupid stuff, whatever. Anyway, we get through it, and when we're done, everybody's over there going,
wow.
And I'm sitting there going, oh, I did it.
Oh.
And then we all became the best of buds, blah, 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 blah. So I go out and do 2 weeks with those guys. As I'm there for the last day out with Stoney, Rodney Crowell calls me and goes, hey, I've got a new record coming out. We're going to do a small tour. Are you in? I was like, absolutely. So I tell Stoney, hey, man, I'm going to go do a Rodney thing. Sorry, you got to find another drummer. So I go out with Rodney for 3 weeks. And on the last day of that, Stoney calls me and says, hey, man, I can't find a drummer that I like. Can you come out and play with us again? I go, yeah. So I go to Stoney for 2 weeks. While I'm out with Stoney for 2 weeks, Rodney calls me again. Says, can you come out and play? I was like, yeah. So I'm out with Rodney. While I'm out with Rodney, Jake Owen calls me. And he's like, hey, can you? I was like, yes. So I go out and play with Jake Owen. Towards the end of the Jake's thing, I get a call from my buddy Chad Warricks, who was like, hey, I got this tour. Can you do it? I was like, yeah. So I'm at this point now, I'm doing Rodney, Stoney, and Chad's tour all at the same time, having to sub out some stuff because I can't do all of it. I'm flying to Spokane, Washington, and Chris McHugh texts me and said, hey, man, can you play the ACMs for Keith Urban? And I was like, yeah, sure. Wow. He goes, so see you in Vegas tomorrow? I was like, yeah. So Harry McCarthy calls me. We get drums situated. I called Chad. I said, hey, Chad, I'm never supposed to play tomorrow. But I had to be in Vegas to do the ACMs rehearsals with Keith Urban. And he was like, man, no problem, dude. He goes, we'll just get Russ to play, who was our buddy who was out with another band. So Russ came in, Russ Whitman. So Russ Whitman came out and he played. He was there already, so he played while I was in Vegas. The next morning, I flew and met those guys, and then we played 2 shows, and then I flew back to Vegas to do the award show. Wow. And then from there, I went back out with Jake Owen. While out with Jake Owen, I got called for the Big and Rich gig, and then so that's been 8 years of that. But while out with Big and Rich, Kev Bell called me, and so Kev was like, hey, man, I'm doing a record. And so I came home and I did the Blues Americana record with Kev. And it was just a fucking crazy year. I did all the, like, Big and Rich put out a record that year, so we did all the TV shows. Kev's record did really well. It was just crazy. It was like the craziest year of my life and the best year of my life, which then has just basically set up the next 8 years of my life. And it's just bizarre. I know it's a long story, but
no, it's a great story. It's so great.
It's just bizarre because I was like, I strongly feel that if I had gone on a date with that girl, I'd be a janitor right now, which is nothing wrong with being a janitor, but
yeah, but it wasn't your dream, right? And you got to start your dream, which is incredible. And I think like it's a good lesson in like taking the opportunities that come, because that one thing leads to the next, and then also like being great to work with and like doing what you did, being the one that showed up to sound check, seeking out the music, writing out the charts, not falling off, like it's just like that's a testament to you and how you work, which is so great.
I think it's really funny because I never really thought about this until now, but I think my work habits throughout that year and then just moving things up to the next level because I mean I did a bunch of, I mean it's weird. I did a bunch of cool stuff before that. I had a decent career before 2014, but 2014 put me like in a different spot with people where I feel like people who didn't know me got to know me more. People who had never heard of me, and I was doing a little bit of everything. I was doing the big and rich country stuff. I was doing blues records with Kev Mo and Taj Mahal, and then I was doing Americana with Rodney Crowell, and then then whatever else was happening, and it was fun because I feel like that was for the first time I trust myself, and I was able to blossom into a beautiful flower, which is and what's funny is I'm still trying to find that, because that was a hectic year, but man, it really paid off, for me, and I got to know people a little bit better. I feel like people start to respect what I do, and also how hard it is, like being on airplanes, being on buses, talking to people, like I was my own tour manager too. It was like I was having to arrange like flights and gear. Like, I remember at one point in time, I had like 4 different drum kits out with people, and I was playing Mapex at the time, and I remember Joe Hibbs. I told Joe, I said, "Hey Joe, man, like this is crazy, but I need 4 drum sets."
Oh my goodness!
And he was like, "No one needs 4 drum sets." And he said, "No one needs 4 drum sets except for Kenny Aronoff." And I was like, "True." And I said, "Well, I'm Keio, Aronoff this year." So, and I explained what was happening, and he was like, "No problem." And so he made it work. We ended up getting the kits out. So it made it easy for me that I didn't have to travel with as much stuff. And Chris Stanky was the same way with Sabian. Like, I was like, "Hey guys, I gotta figure this out." And so we were able to get multiples of stuff to help me navigate through that year, because it just didn't stop at 2014. That kind of thing continued on for 5 years at that pace with everyone. And then the past 3 years have just been mostly big and rich, and then subbing gigs for like Cody and whoever else that calls. But so anyway.
Absolutely. No, that's a good like testament to having great companies behind you too, who like support what you do, because you needed that gear support. Endorsements all the time and all of that. And I think like that's one of the most important things, is like having the support you need out on tour. So
I mean, that was the one thing that was like, it's funny because, I think people think that having an endorsement puts you at a different spot, puts you at a different level, makes you cool, because you get to be associated with a brand. And I think that is cool. Don't get me wrong. It's like, if you go to the whatever website and you see your face on their website, you're not the only one seeing that. Everyone's seeing that. And if your face is in a catalog next to Ricky Rocket, who actually is a really good buddy of mine, but it's like, if your face is there next to that person, all of a sudden, you're not equals, but you're on the same page. So you are in some way, you know what I mean? Like you're at least peers to a certain point. So there's an element of cool there, but where it really works and where it's really cool is when you need something like 4 drum kits to make a year work for you, or a couple of years work for you, and they go, they recognize what you got to do, and you go, and then it's at the same time, there's always a logo there. There's there's a post saying, "Hey guys, thanks for this." It's not just like, "Hey, thanks for the free gear." It's like, my life would suck if you guys weren't here to help me out. And so, and I would say that, like, not to be like plugging companies and all, but like, Pearl, I've been with Sabian for almost 20 years. I know 15 years for sure, because Ava was a baby. Ava wasn't even 1 yet when I joined on with Sabian, and Ava's my daughter, not my dog, my daughter. So 15 years with those guys. I've been at Pearl now for I think 4 years. I've been at Vader for about 7 years now. I've been at Evans about 10 years. So it's like those guys have been really, really great to me, and they make touring easy. They make sessions easy, because even now with my life, well, now that I'm more home now, I'm not touring so much. It's a little easier, but before, with Big and Rich, I had an A rig and a B rig, and
Yeah.
that's two giant double bass kids.
Yes.
so, yeah, so it had that, and then I have a kid at home for recording as I'm pointing to a room that you can't see, and then at Drum Paradise for just your everyday sessions, I have 2 kids there, and it was like, and not all that stuff is free, but they make it to a point where I can work, and it makes it easier where I don't have to take this drum set out to go do sessions. I don't have to bring a drum kit home to go play a local gig,
Right.
So there is an element of like, help there that's amazing that I think people should really think about when they start to look into the endorsement thing, because it's like, it's not, and not to go on a tangent about endorsements, everybody does it, but it's definitely about a relationship of people who help each other. And sometimes it's just a relationship of people who just respect each other. Like, you know what I mean? Like I call Stanky, I call Fart, I call Aaron and Brandolini, like not a weekly, I say call, but I send them stupid text messages away from playing, because I respect them as people, and we're friends. I think we're friends now. I've known them for years. So it's like we have that relationship that's not just I hit you up when I need something. It's like I hit you up when I think about you. And then I hit you up when I need something.
Yes. Yeah, and I can say, like, being on the receiving end of that as working in the industry and being in AR, like those text messages or those calls that are just like checking in or whatever, they mean everything. It's just like that relationship means everything. So
absolutely, yeah. You mean everything. You mean everything. You.
But you just mentioned something I want to touch on. Coming off the road and the change that you had this year with coming away from the tour life, the Big and Rich tour life. And I know that was like, it was a long, it was a decision that you thought about for a long time before you that choice, but you have really, really great perspective on why and what it means to you. So I just want you to talk a little bit about that.
Well, the first thing is this: those guys were fantastic to me for right at about 8 years. They were great. It was so fun. So the decision to leave was very hard. But I had 2 things that were weighing on me. One was I have a now 15, almost 16-year-old daughter who has been very patient with me. And we don't live, I live in Nashville. She lives in Wisconsin. So I don't see her every day. But I decided I wanted to be available for her when she needed me. So I've missed birthdays, I've missed plays, I've missed band concerts, I've missed wrestling events, whatever she wants, things that that are big for her. I've missed them over the years. And so this year I was like, well, I'm not moving to Wisconsin. There's that. But I do want to be more available to her when she wants something, because she's been very nice and she's sacrificed, having my support physically there for her, and has done her thing and lets me do my thing. So I'm like, well, I need to do stuff for her. I need to be there for her, especially being that she's, we have 2 more years of her she'll be 16 in March. So we have 2 more years of her being a child or a non-adult. And then I can't tell her what to do, so she'll be on her way. So I have 2 more years to be bossy, like,
right?
But so that was part of it, and it's worked out great. So since I've been home, she's had things she want me to come to, and I've done it. I go do them, and we have fun, and we talk, and we're there, we're available, and it makes it so much fun. And then the other side of that was, Big and Rich wasn't going to tour forever. I'm 42 years old ish, or 43, whatever. I'm old, whatever. And I wanted to set up the back half of my life. I wanted to go to the next step of my career, which would be to play on more records, because I love being creative. Every morning, this sounds so silly, but every morning I go to my kitchen, because it's nasty. I go to my kitchen, I grab something out of it, and I hit it with a stick or mallet, and I go to my room and I record it, and then try to make a loop out of it. Sometimes it's cool, sometimes it sounds like shit, whatever. But whatever. But that's what I do. And so I was like, you know what? I need to figure out how to be there more for my kid and then set up the rest of my life. So I decided to do more to focus on the home recording thing. And I hit up my buddy Lester, I hit up McHugh, hit up Miles, and hit up Nick Buda and all my friends and Caesar, all those guys that were doing it. And they've helped me put together a nice little thing here. And then as a result of that and having good sounds, I also put in the effort and then went to a bunch of songwriter festivals and played cajon or conga or shakers or whatever to drum up work, because songwriters, you know, I'm not making, I mean, I have made some records. Some stuff I've played on is made on records here, but for the most part, I'm just doing demos for people, you know? And so I want to make it where I can work from home when I want to work, or work from home as much as possible, but yet be available for my daughter. So like if someone calls me and says, hey man, can you track this? And I'm gonna go, well, I'm with my kid. I'll do it when I get back. They go, cool. As opposed to, I'm with my kid. Hey, we have a show tomorrow. And I'm like, well, I'm with Ava. And it's like, well, and then you're like, Ava, I have to go, you know? So, or, you know, or the thing of I'm tracking something here and Ava's like, hey dad, like I really have a thing on in a couple of days. Can you come do it? I go, yeah. So you just put your mark on the calendar. No, I'm not available. So, you know what I mean? And so it becomes more of a flexibility thing. The hard part about that is it's rebuilding a business. So income sucks.
Right. And I understand that. That's a hard thing. It's hard to kind of like move away from something that's steady, you know, and reliable and that kind of thing, and do your own thing. But like, it's amazing that you have control over your time now and what you do and what you don't do. And that's so freeing. And I know about that myself. And it's like, you know, it's an amazing thing. And then also to be able to give to your child like that. That's
and friends. Like I have friends that I never get to see. Now I get to see my friends, family. I don't go see my family. No, I will see them. But you know, it's like the cool thing about it though is that as this whole thing is happening, I feel like I'm building something. I'm getting more busy at home. I'm super happy, and it totally reminds me. I moved to Nashville almost 22 years ago, so this time reminds me of 20-year-old Keio, with a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more back pains, but it reminds me of that same time, and I have that same youthful thing. I say youthful, but I have that quest to go find stuff and find who I am and find work and find people. Because you know, basically everybody that I work with, you know, like working with Big and Rich, I don't work with Big and Rich anymore. You know, and I'm not saying that's over, but like they have a drummer, so they're not calling me, you know, and things like that. So I'm having to rebuild my life, and it's strange and it's fun. It's stressful is not the word. It's just challenging because you know we know, you know, we get into our routines. We know what we're used to. We know what we're used to having financially, emotionally, what creates, you know, creative wise, creatively, and all that stuff. Words I don't know that I'm making up, but you know, it's like we have all this stuff, dictionary. But you know, and then all of a sudden you get dropped into a hole of freedom, and you're like, oh, wow, you know, it's like being in space, and you see a star, and you're like, that star is close, and then you realize that some bitch is like, you know, 350 million years away.
Sure. Yeah.
but you're gonna get to it, you know. But you're gonna go. You're gonna get there, and so that's kind of where life is now, and it's very enjoyable.
And you know that you'll get there because you know how hard you can work and what you can do, you know, with your creativity. And I think like that's an important thing to recognize as well. And I just want to say, you posted a photo not that long ago on Instagram of you as a kid playing drums, and the smile on your face was so Great. And it's the thing that struck me is like, it's still the same. Like, that's still the same smile. You're still so happy playing. And like,
Yeah.
what a gift that is to be happy, right? At the end of the
I,
day,
I know.
things might be hard or stressful or uncertain, but like the thrill and the happiness and the love for what you're doing and the creativity is the same. So
Oh,
like,
totally.
that's so amazing. And I also want to say that I saw a clip of you sampling bathwater, right? And like turning it into a loop. That's
Yeah.
stuff like that's like my thing. I love stuff like that. And it was so great. I was just like, when I saw it, I was like, yeah, this is so great.
Yeah.
Keep doing that. And keep discovering new sounds, because like, how fun is that to do? Like,
It's fun. It's like,
yeah.
it's a blast. And, and I'll say this too, having friends, to help you along the way is so good, to support you. I mean, we talked about
Mhm.
companies and stuff like that, but like having like just friends, like having people like that, that go, hey man, you got this, you can do this, or hey man, I'll recommend you for a gig, or hey, I
Yeah.
have a gig, can you come do it, or I have a session, whatever. Man,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Like having the community around you is awesome. And one of the things you have to realize, and I'm having to realize, is that just because you're not busy doesn't mean that the community is not with you.
Yes.
Like, because people always think, man, if I'm not busy, no one likes me, blah blah blah. I've been there. That's the anxiety talking, right?
Sure.
But the thing is that you have to realize that like everything has a season. It's like
Mhm.
rain. It's like there's rain just sitting there going, I can't wait to rain. I can't wait to rain. Well, wait, and then it rains. That's how our careers are. Where it's like things have to happen, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, it's
Mhm.
there, and then it could be
Mhm.
there for some people. It's always there, and for
Yes.
but like I imagine Steve Gaddis probably had a year or two where people didn't call him,
Right.
or whoever. I've had times where like, well, thankfully I have money saved up, but no
Yes.
one's calling me right now because they don't need what I have to offer right now. But doesn't mean I'm a bad player. Doesn't mean I'm not a desirable person or
Mhm.
whatever. I mean, sometimes it does mean that, but for people who've been working, it's like you just have to realize that you're gonna be fine.
Mhm.
Just don't stress about it, and don't think that because your phone isn't ringing right now that it's not going to ring for something. Because one of the things I'm now learning is that if you want something, you have to be available for it.
Mm.
And if you're unavailable for it, then it's never going to happen. I mean, this year happened a couple times where I got a call for some stuff and I'm a really like loyal person where like if I say I'm doing something, I do it. I don't tend to back out of it.
Mhm.
But I got called to do like a couple of tours in Europe, and I had one gig that interfered with it, and I turned down the tours.
Oh.
But and
Yeah.
it sucks, but that's you have to. Sometimes you have to do that. It obviously depends on if Lady Gaga had called me about doing the European
Right.
tour,
Right.
I'd be like, sorry, you know. But
Yeah.
there's a sense of that, and people recognize that, and they appreciate that loyalty. Also, we're like even
Yes.
like I was just out with Cody Johnson, and they asked me to sub almost 9 months ago. And
Mhm.
they were like, hey, we don't think we have shows, but can you block off this week? And I was
Right.
like, absolutely. And so things came in for that week, and I said no, hoping that this was still going to happen with Cody. And
Right.
it did. It ended up happening, and it was good. And they were like, hey man, we really appreciate you, doing the work and blocking off the
Mhm.
time to do it. That means a lot. I said, hey man, you guys asked me to do it, I did it, and I feel like that approach goes a long way with people. And I'm not saying it
Mhm.
because I did it, but I think a lot of people do it, and that's what keeps them working and keeps them going, and it keeps the
Yes.
respect happening, throughout your career. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And that'll keep the phone ringing too, because you get a reputation of being reliable and having integrity and all of those things. And that can only help you in the future. And you just mentioned Lady Gaga, and I have to say I saw a clip maybe a couple days ago of her talking about your dreams, right? So like she was saying something along the lines of, you know, you can, whatever it is that you are looking to do, you will do it if you're willing to just keep going, right? To just like keep moving forward. And that's the hardest thing because, you know, you like you talked about the star, so it's off in the distance and you know you're going to get there, but it might take a long time, naysayers or whatever, but what I found is if you have that community, you've developed that community, or you've established it over the years and paid into that community too, right? And it comes
totally.
back to push you forward, right? To like be there for you, and reach out and rely on those people, because that's what gives you, you know, that push forward. And I think that's super important, and just keep going no matter what. Keep moving forward, you'll get there.
I tell people all the time, so this is a funny thing about me, because I moved here as a young man with no family here, and lots of eagerness. I was a very eager guy. And also, I love music. But I would go out every night. And I would go and see people play. And it wasn't because I was trying to get gigs. I just love music. And I loved supporting the scene. And I still do it. And I tell people this all the time. You get out of it what you put into it. So if you don't put anything into the community, you can't expect to get anything out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, if you can't expect your neighbor to cut your grass for you every week if you never go cut their grass.
Right.
You know, you can, you know, and as silly as that sounds, it's so true, because if you're out there and you're supporting people because for the right reason, because you want to support them, they actually will want to support you, because they go, man, this person's giving to me, I want to give to them. And all of a sudden you have a giving conversation going on, and it's going back and forth. And it's one of the things that I feel like makes a lot of people successful in the music business. Like, you see people like I'm going to use James Taylor for an example, but you know, you have James Taylor, and he's had several drummers throughout the years, but he always goes back to Steve Gadd. You know, he always goes to those guys, and I feel like, and it's happened from you know, when they were years ago, and I feel like people come up together because they help each other. As opposed to like, well, I'm here, so I'm just going to hire this person here. And it's like, no, like everybody can come up together. You know, like when I see people like Rodney Crowell and Emmylou Harris and Vince Gill, and the Guy Clarks and the Towns Van Zants of the world, I see that community, and I see that where like when one person does this, they all do that.
Yes.
And it does that. Yes. You know what I mean? And it's like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if your people are talented and they can do the job, then you bring them with you, because that's your support system. And I see those people, because I've worked with Rodney on now for almost 15, 16 years. And that's one of the things I noticed, that even today, he can go make a record with Emmylou. He can go make a record with Vince. You know, or when I was playing them, sometimes we'd play festivals with Guy, and we'd share a band or whatever. And it was cool, because you have these people who collaborate professionally and personally, and they just kind of they're all doing this. And I go, that's the secret. that is the secret to being successful, is to not only when you come up meet new people, but also when you have people that support you, you support them and lift them up. You know, and I'm babbling, but you know what I mean? It's like, you know, but it's
so great.
But like, I've had a lot of time on my hands this year, so I just think a lot. But but it's true, and I've noticed that for myself, where like there are people that I worked with years ago that I still work with, and we hired each other. There are people that I worked with years ago that I don't work with, and because they've done their thing, and it's cool, and they've got a whole nother set of things going on. But I'm still happy for them. When I and I don't talk to everybody every day, but like if a friend of mine gets like Musician of the Year, and I haven't talked to them in like a year, I sent them a message going, man, congrats. Because I'm really happy for them. Because I remember when we both talked about, man, this will never happen for us. And then it happens for them. You can't help but be happy for them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the friendship that, is lasting, because you can do that after a year and it feels like, you never lost touch or you never stopped texting or whatever. Like that's a beautiful thing too. But I think we're both very, very lucky to be in this industry that has that support system. And also, it has to do with what we've put into it too. And I think that's a really important thing. And you've done such a great job of that. And the community in Nashville is so incredible. The drumming community is just like
it's way
the
cool.
very best.
Yeah, we're all friends, even though we make fun of each other. We're all friends. Like we all, yeah, I mean, we all get it. It's like everybody came here with a dream, and some people live it, some people don't. Like I remember I can't remember exactly what the quote is, but I remember watching that Nathan East documentary that Yamaha did, and Ricky Lawson's in it, and he said, some people come here with their dreams inside of them and they never get to live them. Because I get to live my dream, and I thank you for making that happen. And I live by that quote, because it's like, man, how many people do we know that would dream of doing what I do? Even though I spend a lot of time on the couch, but like, how many people would dream? You know what I mean? It's like, I took a photo last week when I was out with Cody, and it was like, it's the first time in a year that I basically had been out playing arenas since leaving Big and Rich. And I took a photo of that, and I stared at it for a couple of days, and I was just like, holy shit, man. Like, I am living my dream. I'm living several other people's dreams right now. There's so many people that want to be here, and I'm here. And the way I think about it is that when I get those opportunities, I have to live them for not just myself, but for everyone else. That's why when you go out and when you're out and doing those gigs, you gotta be thankful and be happy. I mean, the audience doesn't give a shit that it took you 22 hours to get there.
Right.
The person that wish they were doing it would do 36 hours walking to get there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
True.
So you have to, all that stuff you have to take in and be appreciative to it. And it can get routine, and you can be like, oh my God, we're at the Hertz Center again. Catering sucks. Then you're like, there's some homeless people, so there's that. Whatever.
I really do think that the pandemic reset a lot of that for a lot of us. I was tired. I feel like I think about it, and I took a lot of things for granted. I took, the opportunity to be out all the time at live shows for granted a little bit. It was like that was life, and it was like the pace that I was living, like you talk about, the pace on the road and everything, but the pace that I was going at was exhausting. And so like, I think about it now and I'm like, okay, like as terrible as that time was, the perspective reset, I think, was like necessary for me personally.
Totally.
It was a big life reset as well, but like, it gave me such appreciation for those moments and not to take anything for granted. And I feel like even being at a venue and like appreciating the surroundings, appreciating the people who work there, like it's just a different feeling now.
Oh, totally. I mean, and it's also that thing of just like, man, all right, this is what I do. Yeah. And it's not necessarily who I am. This is what I do. This is my job, and I'm very thankful for it. Like, I am. This is gonna sound really bad, but whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm one of the best out there.
Right.
That sounds horrible, but like being a musician is no different from being a professional athlete in this manner that I'm about to speak in. Obviously, I'm not the best, but I put the hard work in, just like those guys that put the hard work in, and the percentage of people who get to do what I do and what those guys get to do is very tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you work hard and you're there because you deserve to be there, but that doesn't mean you can take it for granted because you've made it.
Yes.
I can't say that I've made it per se, but I've done things that people have not had a chance to do, and I'm very thankful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, and I equate that to being a professional athlete, because those guys, they get judged on being the best, like they're the best. I'm just doing it. I'm not the best, but I'm doing it. But in saying that, our lives are kind of parallel in that manner, where I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but it's like I'm one of the few who are dumb enough to do it. There we go.
Or brave enough, right? I mean,
but you know what I mean? It's like, and you have to, sometimes you have to think about that, and you go, man, I've worked hard to accomplish this thing.
mm-hmm.
So because of my hard work, I should never take it for granted.
Yes.
And I should also not let people take me for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And do whatever I can to help people live out their dreams.
I love that.
I think that's the best way to put it.
That's a great way to put it. I love it. I love that. And I really so appreciate you coming on today and like imparting some of that perspective. It's really great. And, you know, it's been awesome to watch you and your career and the changes happen and you succeeding through it all. So keep going. I can't wait to see what's next.
I'm going to probably fall.
No.
No,
we'll be there to pick you up, right? If that happens.
No, I will say this. I said this at the panel. Embracing the unknown. You know, how like basically the unknown became more in your face during COVID, but the unknown has always been there. I am once again back on the embracing the unknown, and knowing that the unknown doesn't always have to be bad. We always associate the unknown with being bad, but the unknown could be the greatest gift ever.
Yes.
You know, the unknown could be that I could have a text message, you know, when we get off the phone for a gig, for a session, or it could be my grandmother saying hi. Yeah. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Or, you know, so the unknown doesn't always have to be feared. It can be embraced, and sometimes the unknown is something horrible, like a death or whatever, or something like that. But you have to have a healthy perspective to embrace it, and it's. I think I should say this. I think it's healthy to embrace it, and it helps everyone moving forward because it takes the fear out of the future. You know, like this sounds so silly. There should be no fear in future. It should be all eagerness.
Yes,
excitement. You know what I mean? Or excitement. You should be excited about especially if you're living your best life. If you're living a good life and you're a good soul, then you should have nothing to fear about. You should all, you know, like I said, life can happen, but life happening doesn't always have to be bad. Life happening can be great. I feel like you and I and people that we know have all had great lives, even when things come back to set us back or set us up. You know, it's like, it's weird. You know, you don't always, you know, like, it's like when you pull a bow and arrow, right? You don't shoot the arrow from there, right? You pull it back and then you release. And sometimes that's what life is. You got to pull back, aim, and then release. As stupid as that sounds, it's like it works.
I like that. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I'm excited for your future, and you know, just all the good things that are going to happen.
Let's do it. Let's do fun stuff.
Let's do fun stuff. I like it. Well, thank you so much, Keio. I really appreciate you coming on today and spending the time and sharing. So thank you.
Thank you. I had so much fun. Thank you.
We'll do it again soon. We'll see each other soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so. Like,
all right. You
next
take
week.
care.
All right.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. Join us each Tuesday for new episodes of Sarah Hagan Backstage.